Throughout your life, you've been told that if you just don't give up, eventually you'll make it. That success comes to those who simply refuse to quit. But if you're a creator and you want to get ahead of 99% of other creators, this is terrible advice. Ignore it. Successful creators quit all of the time. They just quit the right stuff at the right time. And this idea that strategic quitting is the real secret to success is the core message behind this book called The Dip by Seth Godin. See, almost everything worth doing in life is controlled by what Seth calls the dip, which looks like this. And here at the beginning is when you start something new, whether it's a YouTube channel or a business or any venture or project, and you get this initial rush and you're learning fast and everything feels exciting and you're breaking new ground. And even if you're not getting thousands of views or customers, you can still feel yourself improving, and that feeling of progress keeps you going. But then the dip sets in, and this is what Seth describes as the long slog between starting and mastery. And it's where the excitement wears off and reality kicks in. And it's made up of all of those small repetitive investments that you make day after day and week after week and month after month with very little to show for it in those moments. But just in case you missed it, I want to point out at the bottom of this illustration here that x-axis is not time, it's effort. There's no guaranteed timeline when it comes to the dip. You're not promised success just by waiting it out. And it's in this stretch, this dip, that 99% of people either quit and abandon their pursuit entirely, or they settle into becoming average and simply existing within the dip for months or years, never making it to those huge rewards, waiting for those who push through. But what most people miss about the dip is that it's not your enemy. In fact, it can be the secret to your success, though only if you know how to use it in the right way. See, the dip exists for a reason. In fact, it's the very thing that separates the top 1% of creators from everyone else. And in today's creator economy, that gap between the best and the average isn't just big, it's exponential. Which is why in this video, I'll break down why the dip is so powerful for creators and, more importantly, how to start using it to your advantage. The first thing to understand is that almost everything worth doing in life is controlled by the dip. Every successful YouTube channel, every thriving creator business, every engaged community are all on the other side of a dip. And the reason is simple, that without the dip, there would be no scarcity. And without scarcity, we wouldn't see it as valuable, and that's why the dip is your greatest ally. If there was no dip, if reaching success was just about putting in the time, then everyone would eventually make it. Every YouTube channel would hit 100K subscribers, and every creator would build a massive audience and a successful business on top of it. But that's not how it works, and there's a good reason for that. The dip does something crucial in that it weeds out everyone who isn't serious about mastery. It creates a barrier between those who try and those who become the best. And in doing so, it creates that valuable scarcity for the 1% who do make it through. Most people who look at this graph see this long stretch of effort without equal returns as a problem to avoid or to want to find an alternate route around. But what if I told you that that exact common response is directly in your favor? Every day that you push through the dip, other creators are quitting. And every video that you make just a little bit better than the last, without seeing huge results in return, others are giving up. And sure, the dip is a test for you, but more than that, it's eliminating your competition for you. It turns out the quickest way to the 1% is directly through that dip, not circumventing it. This is why successful creators don't just survive the dip. They lean into it. They use it as an opportunity to improve, to refine their skills, and to get better while others are giving up or wasting time trying to avoid it. They understand that the dip is their competitive advantage, and it's not just something to endure. But where most creators get confused here is that they believe that pushing through every dip that they encounter is the answer, and that persistence and resilience in the face of adversity and struggle is the simple key to success. But the reality is much more strategic, and it starts with understanding the counterintuitive truth that successful creators are the biggest quitters of all. In fact, the most successful people in any field, especially creators, quit far more often than unsuccessful ones. The difference is they quit strategically. They quit the right things at the right time and avoid quitting the wrong things at the wrong time. See, most people approach the dip backwards. They start many projects and chase every opportunity, and then they try to push through all of them. They think success is about persistence alone. They may even be aware of the dip and know that it gives them an advantage, so they keep going and they never give up, and maybe eventually they break through on some of them. But what truly successful creators understand is that you can't push through every dip you encounter. You don't have the time, energy, or resources. The secret isn't to never quit. It's to quit as early as possible on the things that aren't worth pursuing. And I love the way that Seth puts it in the book. The brave thing to do is to tough it out and to end up on the other side, getting all the benefits that come from that scarcity. The mature thing to do is to not even bother starting because you're probably not going to make it through the dip. And the stupid thing to do is to start, give it your best shot, waste a lot of time and money, and quit right in the middle of the dip. And a few people will choose to do the brave thing and end up the best in the world. Informed people will probably choose to do the mature thing and save their resources for the project that they're truly passionate about. Both of those are fine choices, but it's really that last choice, the common choice, the stupid choice, the choice to give it a shot and then to quit when you hit the dip. And it's that choice that you must avoid if you truly want to succeed. See, the most successful creators, yes, can push through the dips that matter, but just as importantly, they're extremely talented at quitting. They quit fast on things that won't lead to breakthroughs, and they quit early or even before starting projects that, even if they could make it through, aren't the most important or valuable dip to have conquered. They do this because they understand something crucial, that every project you quit that isn't serving your core mission frees up your resources to push through the dips that actually matter. Every pretty good venture that you leave behind here gives you so much more energy to become exceptional at what truly counts. Now, I'll be honest, the first time that I read this book, I really struggled to get through it. Of course, focusing on what matters and pushing through resistance is the secret to success. And maybe you're feeling that way right now. On the surface, it is a bit of brain dead advice. You know this already. You're not stupid. You've noticed that all your life, the biggest rewards go to those who push through the hardest tasks and who don't lose focus on distractions. But it likely hasn't made a difference so far because knowing something is very different from acting on it. And I want you to be honest. If you look back, how many times in your life did you quit a project or give up learning a skill or quit a business idea that you'd started in the heart of the long valley of the dip? Or how many times did you strategically quit before you even set out? Or how many of those are you still currently in the dip of, hoping to make it through someday? And I don't blame you on any of those, whether you quit in the dip countless times or whether you never actually quit strategically, or if you have a bunch of dips going on right now, because Seth's advice is hard to follow. Quitting something, anything, and maybe some that you even enjoy, is incredibly uncomfortable and painful because even if it's simple and maybe logical, we've been conditioned to see quitting as a moral failing. For me personally, as someone who grew up with very little means, I find it nearly impossible to pass up on an opportunity or to quit something that shows promise. So I keep dozens of backburners lit and I refuse to let their light go out. And not only because I genuinely enjoy many of them, which I do, but because they also feel like insurance against failure. But what Seth reminds us in the dip is that the true power of this book that I discovered when I finally managed to make it through the second time around is that as creators, we can't just understand this intellectually. We have to rewire how we think about quitting entirely. We have to start quitting the vast majority of our projects and ventures long before the dip forces us to. Now, I know better than most that it feels counterintuitive, like we're closing doors to opportunity, but as a creator, this strategic quitting is the very thing that opens doors to extraordinary success, because the market we're in rewards the top 1% disproportionately, and you can't get there by keeping every option alive. And that realization, uncomfortable as it is exactly the kind of real-world strategic clarity that I'll be exploring in Comfort is the Cage. So if you want to go deeper into the most effective methods for overcoming the hard truths standing between creators and success, then check out the waitlist linked in the description to be the first to get access when it launches. But for now, the truth about the rewards being disproportionately given to the 1% is that the market rewards superstars, not people who are pretty good and not people who are better than most at most things. Superstars. In the book, Seth argues that just about everything you learned in school about life is wrong. But the wrongest thing, as he puts it, might be that the secret of success is being well-rounded, and that even though society talks about the value of diversification, real success comes to those who obsess about the right thing. And nowhere is this more true than in the creator economy. The rewards, the views, opportunities, income, all flow almost entirely to the best 1%. When someone searches for a solution or answer, they're not looking for the fourth best channel or even the second best. As Seth points out, anyone who is going to watch you or subscribe to you or purchase a product from you or recommend you to somebody else is going to ask themselves first, are you the best choice? But being the best sounds impossible. After all, how can anyone be the best creator in the entire world? The good news here is that you don't have to be. And as Seth explains, anyone who's going to watch you or subscribe to you or buy from you is making their choice based on their world, not the entire world. They're looking for the best option for them right now based on what they believe and what they have access to. This is where the internet and social media and YouTube has transformed everything. The mass universal market that used to exist is now dying. There's no longer one best song or one best type of coffee. On one hand, the world is getting larger because anyone can look everywhere to find exactly what they want. But at the same time, it's getting smaller because categories are getting more specialized, and instead of one best teacher or one best approach, there are now countless micro markets. And while each micro market might be getting smaller, they all still need a leader. This creates both opportunity and danger. The opportunity is that you can define your world. You get to choose the space where you want to become the best. You don't have to be the best in the world or at everything. You just have to be the best in your chosen world. But this same infinite choice makes being pretty good at many things now the fastest path to invisibility, and the algorithm itself amplifies these market dynamics where being better than 98% of creators used to be enough maybe a handful of years ago, but now it guarantees that you'll be ignored. And this is why understanding the dip is more crucial than ever. In a world of infinite choice, the gap between the best and the average is becoming exponential. And if we think about what this means in practice, every day that you push through your chosen dip, the algorithm is in turn working in your favor. And while others quit or settle for being pretty good, it's amplifying your persistence. And while they spread themselves thin trying to be good at everything, it's rewarding your obsession with mastery on that one thing. And frankly, the marketplace as a whole is ruthless, but it's rational. And especially in the creator space, which is controlled by algorithms, it rewards the best because there's only room at the top for few. There's only so much attention to go around. And remember, scarcity creates value, and it's the dip that creates that scarcity. This is why pushing through the right dip is so valuable. It's your path to becoming irreplaceable in your world. But as a creator with limited time and resources and energy, the stakes of getting this right could not be higher. Push through the wrong dip, you waste precious resources. Quit the wrong dip, and you miss your chance at becoming the best. The difference between success and invisibility comes down to one crucial question: how do you identify dips worth conquering? Now, in order to answer that, let's look at what we've covered so far. We've established that the dip exists, that it creates scarcity, and that scarcity creates value. We understand that being the best matters more than ever, and we know that strategic quitting is how successful people get through the right dips. So what does that mean for you right now? Well, most likely you're already juggling multiple projects, strategies, channels, or businesses. And that means that your first step is what I'm calling the cleanup quit. With everything that we've covered in mind, look at each of your current projects through this lens and ask yourself a few questions. Could this project or product or channel be the best in the specific world that I care about? More specifically, what would it actually take to become the best in that space? Not just in terms of skill or sheer talent, but in terms of the time and energy and resources that would be required in order to push through that particular dip. And then, given everything that you're currently juggling and assuming that you're likely in multiple dips right now, can you realistically commit those resources? Or are you spread so thin that you're guaranteeing yourself to become average and therefore forgettable in that space? Now, while you give that some thought, I'll share a personal example of a cleanup quit from just over the holidays that I did myself, where I practiced what I'm preaching here. And that was when I looked at my first YouTube channel, which was actually doing fairly well last year. It was monetized, growing steadily, and by most metrics succeeding for a new and small channel. But when I looked honestly at its position and its potential, I realized two things. First, while I enjoyed it, I wasn't ready to dedicate to what it would require to become a 1% creator in that space, given the payoff it would grant me should I get there. And second, which was maybe more important, was that even if I did dedicate those resources and I was able to push through the dip, those resources would be at the cost of making it through the dip on other projects much more valuable and better aligned with my long-term goals. And in the end, quitting that channel despite its promise freed up the resources I needed to launch this channel, which has grown 10 times faster than my first one, because not only am I much better positioned to become one of the best in this world given my background and my experience and my skills, but it also now has my full strategic focus, having quit multiple other projects stuck in their own dips, including that first channel. Now, doing this isn't fun. Cleaning up and quitting those projects is painful, both emotionally and honestly a bit rationally, because it formally admits that you're sinking all of that time and energy that you spent on them, and it was energy that could have and should have been used more directionally on a more important dip. And avoiding all of that waste and pain is exactly why going forward, whenever we entertain adding a new project or venture to our plate, we need to create what Seth calls a quitting contract. And though it's a bit of a morbid analogy, you can think of this as deciding the terms of a divorce while you're still in love, or maybe more accurately, before you even go on a first date, while you're still just interested in the prospect of it, when you can still think clearly before emotion and investment cloud your judgment. And this contract is a very literal thing. Before you start each project, you need to sit down and answer a few questions. First, ask yourself and write down, what specific world are you aiming to be the best in? What challenges are you likely to face on the way there? And everyone likes to be overly optimistic on the second one, that with enough preparation or strategy, or with how smart or clever they are, or if they use the right strategy, that they can make this faster or easier than the average person. And that's fine. Instead, for this exercise, just plot out the average scenario as you see it. Some challenges could be how many videos that it takes while you're still getting no views, or what it will feel like when you have more dislikes than likes on a video, or what it will feel like when you have 15-second retention on a 10-minute video that you spent a week on, or when you create a product and not a single person clicks the link that you put in the description. Next, for the third, I want you to write down the resources that you're willing to invest to overcome those challenges. And this could be anything from the time and energy to the cost or patience or the reps that will be required? Is this dedicating to 100 videos or one video per week or 20 hours per week or investing $500 or $1,000 on education? Maybe it's taking on a mentor or coach for a month or 6 months. Next, I want you to define what measurable progress towards best looks like given those challenges and resources. Now, you aren't defining here what ultimate success looks like. This should not be an end goal that you reach by X date as an ultimatum. It should instead be what measurable progress looks like toward that goal while you're inside of the dip, day on day, week on week. What is the progress that you should expect in return for that investment on those challenges? Finally, as the last point in the contract, I want you to set the conditions that would either signal that you either can't or shouldn't continue investing those resources. This could be anything from lack of tangible progress over a period of time or through a specific number of reps, or even an emotional or mental toll that would cross a boundary for you. And it's in this chapter on the quitting contract where Dick Collins, the legendary ultramarathon runner, offers one of my favorite insights that Seth includes in the book about pushing through the dip. He says that if you're making decisions based on how you feel in the moment, you will probably make the wrong decision. And if we think about that in the context of creating content, when you're deep in the dip, when your subscribers are stuck and when that video you spent weeks on barely gets any traction, and when it feels like you're publishing into the void, how do you feel? Frustrated, discouraged, maybe even a little desperate. And in that moment, every fiber of your being is telling you to quit. And all it would take is one mistimed negative comment, and you might be out. And this is exactly why Collins insists that elite runners decide before the race exactly what conditions would make them stop. Because out there on the trail at mile 40 of the ultramarathon, with screaming feet and aching muscles, everything feels like a good reason to quit. Your judgment is compromised by pain, fatigue, and emotion. And the same thing happens to creators in the dip. And that's why the quitting contract matters. It removes emotion from the equation when you're deep in the struggle and everything feels impossible. It gives you an objective measure to judge whether you're actually facing a legitimate reason to quit, or if you're just experiencing the expected pain of what it takes to push through that dip. But what makes this especially important for creators like us is that, unlike a marathon which has a clear finish line, the creator journey is more open-ended. You're not just pushing through one big dip. You're navigating multiple dips that overlap and evolve, and the skills that you need to master and the audience and the growth that you're trying to reach, the production of content that you're creating and iterating on, they all have their own dips. And this plurality of dips is compounded by the fact that as a creator, we lack a predefined path, and there are countless routes to get to that end goal and dozens of optional tactics and methods that you can add to your strategy, all pulling from your limited and finite resources. How many of you have considered a YouTube channel, or maybe a second YouTube channel, or shorts, or a podcast, a newsletter, social channels with reels, creating a couple of products, starting up a community, taking a course, maybe joining a cohort, or maybe even an entirely separate bucket of all of those for that other potential path that you're considering as well? Me too. And this is why, in addition to avoiding as many dips as possible, like we discussed in previous sections, for every dip that you do plan to undertake, having clear, predefined conditions for both persistence and for quitting is essential. When you're dealing with multiple dips at once, you need to have that clarity to know which ones are worth pushing through and which ones are draining more resources than you've allowed for in your contract that you could better use elsewhere. The truth is, we all know what it feels like to quit, to look at a project or a dream and wonder if it's worth continuing. But after everything that we've covered today in this video, you now have something that most creators don't: a framework and a method for making that decision strategically, not emotionally. You now know that quitting itself isn't failure, that becoming the best means having the courage to quit the right things at the right time, not because they're too hard, but because they're keeping you from the dips that matter most. So next time that you're facing that decision, remember, the question isn't, should I give up? The question is this dip the one worth conquering? And if this video spoke to you, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. And if you're sticking around on YouTube, make sure to check out this video next, where I introduce more methods for building a successful creator business. And until then, thank you for being here, and I'll catch you in the next one.